Are you looking to play your wildcard in Game Week 3? Well, I've got a draft for you. Before I get into the draft itself, I just wanted to go through some teams that I think are worth targeting to help pull out some players that might be worth buying, basically. I'm going to do so by looking at the clean sheet odds according to Drafthound and projected goals according to Elevenify. A link for both to check out yourself will be in the description. Man City are the first team that I wanted to look at. Their clean sheet odds, bar probably the Arsenal game, but even then, they're pretty decent. The next 5 games are looking quite good. They're all over 30%, and usually when I go through clean sheet odds in my other videos, I would say I would feel comfortable starting defenders that have over 30% to keep, like, odds to keep a clean sheet. So that looks good for Man City. And projected goals wise, bar that Arsenal game, I'll admit, they're all over 2. And in half of the games that aren't the Arsenal game, they're over 2.5 projected goals. So both defensively and from an attacking perspective, and just in general, right? We've seen Man City these first 2 games. They look pretty good, you know. So I think they're worth targeting. Next up, Aston Villa. Their next 4 fixtures, like consecutively, are really, really good. Like, they don't have a dodgy sort of Arsenal fixture mixed in. And then Man United at home in their 5th, I would suggest, might not be as good defensively, but from an attacking perspective, I think it would be just fine. Man United don't look like they've improved much defensively at all from last season yet. Leicester, Everton, Wolves, Ipswich away, and Man United in their next 5. Clean sheet odds look good. In the 4 opening of those 5 fixtures, they're over 30% to keep a clean sheet. And they're in and around 2 projected goals, according to Elevenify, in all of those games as well. So, you know, I would say you could back them defensively in most of those games and from an attacking perspective as well. Chelsea. Now, I'll admit, in the wildcard draft that I would recommend, I'm going to put a couple in this video, but the one that I'm going to recommend, I don't actually have a Chelsea player in, because there's one that you could imagine could be in there in Cole Palmer. But outside of Cole Palmer, I just think there's going to be so much rotation in that Chelsea team. It's going to be really hard to define who is a safe starter. Perhaps the defence is kind of nailed on. In the midfield, you don't really want to be picking the likes of Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo, etc. And then the forward line, I think, is just going to be so unpredictable as to who starts. But their fixtures are really, they probably have, in my mind, the best fixture run for the next 5 of any team in the league. Crystal Palace, Bournemouth, West Ham, Brighton, and Nottingham Forest. In all but, I think that's the Brighton game, isn't it? They're expected to score, well, basically 2 goals per game again. So the next 5 fixtures for Chelsea look good. Like I said, I don't necessarily have them in the wildcard draft that I'm recommending, but if you're building a wildcard, I'd definitely be looking at Chelsea players. And finally, Liverpool. They've actually started the season really quite solidly defensively. You've got Man United away in, well, match day 3, so you'll be building a team with some, if you pick some Liverpool players, they've got Man United away first up. But, you know, I wouldn't totally rule out a Liverpool clean sheet there, and I would definitely expect Liverpool to score some goals at Old Trafford. Man United, like I said, when going through some other fixtures, they are not looking all that good defensively. They're basically the same team as last season at the moment. So I really do like the chances of Liverpool scoring goals in those games. Well, all of those games. You can see there the projected goals. It's similar to what we've seen for the other teams. They're basically projected to score 2 goals in all of their next 5 fixtures. And actually some of them, it's over 2.5. So Liverpool, I think, both from defensively, maybe not that Man United away game, but the other 4, I think they've got very good chance of keeping clean sheets. And you can see there on the clean sheet odds. And then projected goals-wise, I think they're going to be great for scoring goals. So I really like the thought of picking Liverpool players as well. One more thing before I start actually talking about some players. One thing to be conscious of, because I made this mistake on my wildcard a couple of seasons ago, and I don't want anyone to be caught out by this. It's around price changes. So any profit or loss that you make, well, any profit that you make on players in FPL, you only bank 0.1 million for every 0.2 million that they go up. So say, for example, you've got Haaland or Muniz who have gone up to, 6.1, 15.1 million, etc. You sell them, you only sell them for 15 million or 6 million. You don't get the profit. And likewise with the loss, when you sell them on your wildcard, you lose all that money. So you sell them for their current selling price, which basically means if you're looking to tinker with your wildcard team and like the FPL app on your phone, I wouldn't do it, because it leaves you in a position where if you make transfers on your team, you're locked into the current player prices and you could end up losing, vast, well, not at this stage of the season, it's not going to be huge, but you could end up losing 0.1, 0.2 million here and there when tinkering with your team. And that could do all the damage to picking a wildcard team that you like. So I would suggest using, there are plenty of tools out there. I'm going to show you Fantasy Football Hub's like Team Builder and Team Rater. There's a link to sign up in the description. You can use Drafthound, FPL.Team as well. There are plenty of tools out there to allow you to build a team for free without needing to take hits or hits on terms of budget on your team. I just avoid doing it in the official FPL game. All right, so while that's out of the way, we're actually going to talk about some players now. So here are the top goalkeepers for the next 3 game weeks for their expected points. Emiliano Martinez is the #1. He is projected to get the most points of any goalkeeper for the next 3 game weeks. I think that's because the fixtures for Aston Villa are good for clean sheet odds, and he's a good goalkeeper for making saves as well. And I think the best goalkeepers in FPL are ones that keep a decent amount of clean sheets, but consistently get saves bonus. And I think Martinez ticks that box. So a bit of a clue as to maybe who's going to be my goalkeeper there. Next up, we've got the top defenders for the next 3 game weeks. Trent Alexander-Arnold is #1, 15.5 expected points. Very closely followed though by Andy Robertson, a whole million cheaper, 0.2 less expected points. And you got Guardiola, Ben White, Gabriel and Virgil van Dijk. So here's what I've gone for then in my defence. I kind of gave away that I've gone for Martinez. I think the next 3 fixtures for Villa are good. He's good for clean sheets and also saves bonus as well, which I really like. I actually prefer Andy Robertson over Trent at the moment. I have a feeling, I'm not sure it's going to happen this window, but I have a feeling Trent is going to get a move to Real Madrid at some point. He threw a bit of a hissy fit after the game in game week 2. Wasn't happy with Slot subbing him off. So yeah, just one thing to bear in mind, I guess. But one interesting fact about Robertson is that he actually had better underlying data last season, expected goals, expected assists per 90, than Trent did. And this season, there's not very much to split them from an attacking perspective either. I guess there's a bit of a Robertson, renaissance going on because, seasons gone by, you would definitely say Robertson was kind of regressing a little bit as like an attacking output defender, but that's not seeming to happen at the moment so much anymore. And he's a whole million less. And obviously when starting Robertson, you get the same clean sheet odds as Trent. I think saving $1 million and going for Robertson over Trent could well pay off. So I've done that in my wildcard team. I think Rico Lewis is worth going for at 4.5 million. I think he probably plays the next couple of fixtures. And I do think West Ham and Brentford are 2 really nice fixtures to play him for. And then to be honest, if he starts looking like it could be a rotation risk, etc., you could sell him ahead of that Arsenal at home fixture. For me, I think, game on game right now, while he's in the team, he's probably the best 4.5 million defender in the game. But like I said, game on game, it depends how long he's going to stay in that team for. I do really like Anthony Robinson of Fulham as well. I think that Ipswich away fixture could bring a clean sheet with it. He has looked pretty good from an attacking perspective as well. I think he's a really accomplished defender who is good defensively, good going forward, which I think will propel him up the bonus points charts as well. I think he got some bonus points in game week 2. So yeah, that would be my starting back 4 in this wildcard draft. Now, I think it's fair to say that this team is kind of going to be propped up by 4.5 million defenders. So what I wanted to do, I've showed you the players that I've picked, but this is according to Fantasy Football Hub and their top 4.5 million defenders for expected points for the next 5 game weeks. So Pau Torres is actually their #1, followed by Lucas Dean, Aya of Brentford, Konsa, Colwill of Chelsea. Obviously Chelsea with some really, really good fixtures coming up. Colwill being 4.5 million. And I would say he's probably the Chelsea defender that I'd be most likely to pick because it does look like he's Enzo's sort of favourite in that position. He's liking Colwill and Fofana as a centre-back partnership. And I think Colwill's going to play pretty much every game that he's available and fit for. And you got, I think that's James Collins, isn't it, of Brentford? And Dan Burn of Newcastle. I wouldn't read too much into Dan Burn specifically, though. I would just read into the fact that, a Newcastle defender is on that list. And obviously, the defenders' expected points are going to be propped up by their sort of clean sheet potential. So that suggests that the Fantasy Football Hub projected points algorithm is expecting Newcastle to keep some clean sheets. So I wouldn't say necessarily pick Dan Burn, but definitely target a Newcastle defender. All right, onto the midfield then. Salah, well, he's the #1 for the next 3 game weeks. Eze is second. Eze is actually better for expected points in Fantasy Football Hub right now than Cole Palmer is. Cole Palmer is in 3rd place. Saka, Kevin De Bruyne, Son and Phil Foden are the top midfielders for the next 3 game weeks. And I'm kind of hoping seeing that will help you decide who to go for in your midfield as well. This is who I've gone for then. I've gone for Salah, Eze, Smith Rowe and Rodgers. I would say I definitely feel there's a little bit of a risk picking 2 players at the 5.5 and 5 million price point. I think Rodgers is a great pick. But what does worry me a little bit is there aren't really many other options at 5 million. If he does get injured, for example, it's not going to be that easy to hop off of him and get someone else. So that is a risk that you're kind of taking doing that. However, I do think picking a player at the 5.5 million price point is a really good idea. There are multiple options at this price point. I really like Minter of Brighton. I've gone for Smith Rowe in this team. Also like Semenyo. There are plenty of other players you could pick at this price point as well. So I just like the thought of owning one of them. And it's still probably a little bit too early in the season to say that one has emerged at the moment. But I do feel like one or two will emerge as really strong options at this price point. And at that point, if you don't own them, you just hop on them later on. But I think making a placeholder in your team for a player of this price point is kind of the way to go. And then based on the expected points and the fact I think they're both brilliant, I've gone for Salah and Eze as well. I don't think anyone's going to be shocked to see that the top forward for the next 3 game weeks is Haaland. Then you've got Isak, Ollie Watkins, Kai Havertz, Nicholas Jackson, who actually could be a bit of a rogue pick because he seems to be starting at the moment for Chelsea. They kind of do need to play a centre forward, right? And he's kind of the best one they've got at the club. They've got a really nice run of fixtures. Muniz and Mateta, these guys are your top forwards for the next 3, according to Fantasy Football Hub expected points. You might have guessed in the thumbnail, but up front, I've gone for Erling Haaland, Isak and Watkins. I think right now this is probably the best front 3 in the game that you can pick. Haaland is, well, the best player in the game for expected points and just points in general now, I would say. Isak, a lot of managers getting a little bit impatient with him in their team, but I just don't see it. I think he's going to be great. I just think he's been unlucky in a couple of games not to get a return, to be honest. Tottenham at home at St James's Park. I feel like that game could be a goal fest, which Isak is going to be involved in. Then they got Wolves and Fulham after that. I would back him to score in those games, to be honest. I really still like him as an option. Seems to be running and staying fit, etc. So for me, that's enough to go for him. I think you should keep the faith. He's a great price on penalties, playing 90 minutes every game at the moment. I think he's going to come good. And then Ollie Watkins, he's pretty low owned at the moment in the game because he's had a relatively tough start to the season. A lot of other players just having Haaland and Isak as a front 2 or maybe a cheaper striker instead of Watkins. So at the moment, he's not very popular in terms of ownership, which I think if you're on your wildcard, it makes sense to kind of take advantage of that. And the fixtures he's got coming up, I mean, they're fantastic. Leicester, Everton and Wolves, 3 of the weaker teams, probably weakest teams in the league right now, I would say. And also, a lot of people getting, well, I would imagine, are put off by Watkins from the fact he missed a bit of a sitter against Arsenal and hasn't returned in 2 games. But, you know, flip the narrative a little bit. If he scored that goal against Arsenal, I think he'd be immediately in people's thoughts to be in their team for Game Week 3. He was just missing a chance. Like Haaland, I think, missed, there was 8 or 9 sort of big chances in the Premier League last season. And he's probably the best player in the game right now. So I wouldn't be too put off by that. I think Ollie Watkins is a great option. And the fact that his ownership is going to be relatively low at the moment just makes him that much better. So here is how the team looks in summary then. I think you have to captain Erling Haaland for Game Week 3. Mo Salah gets the vice. According to the Fantasy Football Hub AI team rating tool, this team gets a 92% AI rating and is projected to get 63.3 expected points in Game Week 3. Again, if you want to check this out for yourself with your own drafts that you make, there's a link to sign up for Fantasy Football Hub in the description below. On the bench, I've gone for Ben Johnson of Ipswich as my favourite 4 million defender. Played the game against Man City and of course got an attacking return. Harry Winks as the 4.5 million midfielder. I think he's probably the best one for that position. And then right now I've picked Lewis Hall just based on the fact that Dan Burn was there or thereabouts in terms of in terms of defender expected points. But based on what we saw there, I would say Levi Colwill was a decent option as well. So, you know, you've got 4.5 million defenders in this team. You kind of pick based on those expected points or your preferences to who you go for. But I would probably consider squeezing Colwill in there as well if you can. And then just to end the video, I wanted to build a draft without Haaland in it to see how strong you can make it. And it does look pretty good, to be fair. So you can have Trent instead of Robertson, Martinez again in goal, Robinson, Lewis and Colwill as 4.5 million defenders that can rotate around. And then in midfield, you can go for Phil Foden, who I think should be back for Game Week 3, and will also not be very popular, particularly amongst engaged managers with his illness, the fact he's dropped in price, etc. People are actually already selling him when I think he probably plays in Game Week 3. You can then squeeze in Salah and Cole Palmer alongside Rodgers and Eze with Watkins and Isak up front. And you actually look at the AI team rating, slightly better rating, 93%, 62.7 expected points in Game Week 3. If you were that way inclined to go without Haaland, this is the kind of team I think I would build. Alright, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. Let me know in the comments if you're actually going to hit the wildcard button for Game Week 3. I've got the vibe that a fair few managers are going to do that, hence this video. Hopefully you found it useful, and let me know in the comments as well if there are any changes you would make to the wildcard draft I put together. I mean, ultimately, FPL is all about different opinions, right? If everyone had the same opinion, we'd all have the same team, and the game would be really boring. So yeah, let me know if you would change anything about my team. Leave a like rating on the video if you enjoyed it, and you can subscribe to the Golden Goal channel, which should be just there on your screen. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video.